Welcome everyone. It's that time again. It's the Lenovo Smart Collaboration EMEA Technology Club. Thank you for joining us. It's May the 7th, 2024. You're joined today, of course, by three familiar faces. That's Mauro Bussano, Jean Poupard, and myself, Sean Langley. We are the EMEA Smart Collaboration Technical Consultant team, and we'll be taking you through some hot topics of technology related to Lenovo ThinkSmart over the next 90 minutes or so. Of course, please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A section. Those that aren't presenting at the time will be monitoring that and doing our best to answer any questions. If you want any copies of previous technology decks, please just send a request to the three of us and we can send them over. And of course, after today's webinar, you'll receive a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. Table of contents today. Three hot topics. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the world of autopilot and auto login for Teams rooms on Windows. So prepare for that. We're going to go through the whole process, what Lenovo can offer, how to implement it, how to order it, part numbers, what to do in Entra, Intune, all sorts of stuff like that. Then I'm going to hand over to Mauro. He's going to take us through one of our new product announcements. That's going to be the ThinkPad Universal USB-C Smart Dock ThinkSmart Edition. That's a mouthful, but more on that to follow later on. And then I'm going to take you through a second new product announcement, which is the ThinkSmart Tiny Kit. And at the end, if we have time, we'll go over some of the Q&As that will pop up throughout the webinar. Of course, always like to begin on the ThinkSmart portfolio. I'm just going to quickly run through that for those that are not familiar. Of course, the new products will be added into this for the next session, but here's where we're at today. Of course, we have the ThinkSmart One, the only all-in-one bar on Windows, designed for, just above that personal space for small huddle meeting rooms and some smallish medium rooms up to about 10 people, something like that. Available with the USB and IP controller. Next one down, ThinkSmart Hub. Still going strong, flagship products for many years for us, spanning the small and medium and just touching into the large meeting room space. Then we have the ThinkSmart Core, tried and tested compute on the market, used by us and others for room systems which can span all spaces. Peripherals, ThinkSmart Cam and Bar, across the spaces again for personal, small and medium. And we have the Bar 180 that came out recently. And that is, doing really well and bringing some of the meeting spaces to the next level with some of the great features that has on board. Again, can be bought standalone or as part of a room kit with a ThinkSmart Core. We have the ThinkSmart View Plus at the bottom, our Teams display on Android, and that's kind of filling the gap between the small meeting room and the huddle spaces, personal spaces, or, reception desks and stuff like that. ThinkSmart Manager, of course, encapsulates and monitors and manages all of those devices above. And then below that, we have our Google Meet Series 1 room kits, which, of course, are available for small, medium and large meeting rooms up there. And, of course, can be integrated with other third-party manufacturer control systems for complex spaces and stuff like that. So let's get started on Autopilot. Autopilot, from our point of view and from any point of view, is a great addition to Teams rooms on Windows. This really cuts down deployment pain points and the time and often money associated with that time to deploy meeting rooms on Windows. Autopilot is a complete service end-to-end, which we're going to go into detail there, but significantly cuts down all of the manual kind of operations required to deploy Teams rooms on Windows and can get it down to just a few minutes when done properly. So, as I mentioned there, it's a modern offering deployed and managed by Microsoft. It's based on registering customers' devices using their Entra ID, that's the new name for Azure Active Directory, and then you use an MDM such as Endpoint Manager / Intune to configure and manage the devices in the cloud. The device configuration is predefined centrally, so when that device is powered on, it's deployed automatically. So what I mean by this, all this enrollment and configuration stuff, the configuration will be done by the customer. The enrollment is done by Lenovo into Microsoft, and more on that later. And then ideally when doing large deployments, the device hits the customer network. It knows it's been enrolled in Autopilot, and then it will pull down the necessary configuration profiles and all the deployment setup that has been designed and created for that device. So essentially making it a zero-touch deployment. So really, really useful. You don't need a skilled IT tech on site to do that deployment. It can be done by an integrator or partner or somebody proficient in installing the hardware, and then they basically just got to power the device up, put it on the wired network. Of course, if it's wired Wi-Fi only, you would need to connect that to the Wi-Fi first in order for it to pull down its configuration profiles and stuff like that, but really saves a lot of time. And of course, it's a well-established end-to-end process. You know, many customers have been using it for years for Windows PCs. And, you know, as of a few months ago, it was extended to MTRs as well. But of course, with MTRs, there's nuances between MTRs and Windows machines and stuff like that. And this is what we're going to go into detail about on today's webinar. So this is a kind of basic overview of how it looks on here. So if we look at number one, the Windows Autopilot deployment service, the device will hit the network, and it will reach out and it will ask, am I registered to Autopilot? If so, what is the tenant ID information to tie that device to that ID? Then number two, it will hit the customer's Microsoft Entra ID when it gets that, and it will the device will be pointed to an Intune instance where it can download its configuration. Then it will pull down the Autopilot profile and the device configuration and will configure itself accordingly. Now, this configuration can contain all sorts of stuff. It's specific to how the customer end user designs that, you know, so this can involve all sorts of things. You know, they can deploy apps, Skype settings, XML, for example, is a great example we're talking about shortly, and just specific stuff to their MTR to meet their requirements. So how's it look, and what are the benefits of this? As I mentioned, it's fast, zero-touch provisioning deployment. Previously would have taken a couple of hours, really depends on who's doing it and what are those kind of variables in between. Now it can be cut down to 10 to 15 minutes. Microsoft did a demonstration, I believe theirs was about 13 minutes. And in the tests and stuff that we've tested so far, that's pretty true to form. It's consistent deployment. That's very key because, you know, large deployments, as I mentioned, consistency is key. You want to get those standards in place, make sure every device is set up the way you want it and how you want it. So that makes it non-dependent on anyone that's local and their skill level. They've just got to install it and plug it in. IT-driven configuration profiles. You know, anyone that's managing Intune, they'll be familiar with this process. You know, it's expected for users of Intune that know what they're doing. You know, we're not going to be like, yes, we will talk through today how it's done, but, you know, it's not like we'll be on hand to take you through every single, you know, moving forward, every single configuration profile and variable of doing that. It's the customer's responsibility to create and deploy these configuration profiles. Again, there's greater control on deployment. You know, the staff can create their deployment packages and policies and stuff once, and then just rinse and repeat for multiple devices very easily. And of course, this will then lead to lower deployment costs because you don't necessarily need boots on the ground to do that config, flying people to different countries and stuff like that. So that's a win. And of course, it just simplifies the deployment process overall. So it's really important to understand the benefits of this overall process. Now, this is exclusively what we're talking about applicable to Lenovo ThinkSmart MTR on Windows because it's a Microsoft service, doesn't support Zoom Room devices. It's just MTR on Windows. So the devices in our portfolio that are capable of autopilot deployment are the ThinkSmart One MTR with, of course, USB and IP controller. There are the model numbers below. I won't read them all out because that's a bit painful. The ThinkSmart Core MTR, again, that can be USB IP controller, and that can be the full room kit with the standard bar XL, or the bar 180, but ThinkSmart Core compute ultimately. Remember, Lenovo ThinkSmart Core, not an OEM core. At the moment, we're just talking Lenovo ThinkSmart here, and the ThinkSmart Hub MTR as well. However, only models with Windows 11 pre-installed in the Lenovo factory after October 2023. That's when we move to that image. If you do have a device that's on Windows 10, it will need to be updated to Windows 11 first. So that's by downloading a Windows 11 recovery image. It must be on Windows 11 for this deployment, autopilot deployment process to work. So there's the prereqs, MTR on Windows 11 and Microsoft Teams Room Pro license. Very simple. So just going to go into more detail now on all these processes. First, somebody has to register the devices with their unique hardware identifiers. Who does this? Well, we're the partner, the OEM partner Lenovo. With this information, we then have an API integration between us and Microsoft, which is our proprietary connector between them. And then this reaches the Microsoft Autopilot deployment service. The customer's Microsoft Entra ID is added, and then the customer's Microsoft endpoint management piece will follow after that. Also, channel partners are able to do this. If they're a CSP, so that's a cloud service provider, Microsoft business partner that's selling Microsoft cloud solutions, they can do the device registration and it will hit the Microsoft Partner Center and it will follow the same process flow as above. And at the bottom, the customer itself can do registration, and this is very useful for testing. So early deployments, maybe they're just working out their deployment profiles and packages that are being sent to the device. When the CSP is doing it, they would take the PKID and send that to Microsoft. But if the customer itself is doing it, they take the 4K hardware hash code or number to do that. More on those two later and how to obtain them. So the 4K hardware hash is a system variable that a CSP or end customer can use to register the device. It's a 4,000-bit character, includes the unique system properties that Autopilot requires. This data can be extracted very easily using PowerShell, or it can be requested to Lenovo using that part number below, and the list price of that is $5 per device. So when we do that, we would get that number at the factory for the device. The PKID, or the Microsoft Product Key ID, is on the label on the device. So you can see hidden down there on the box, there's the PKID, 13-digit ID, and that will do the same registration. However, it can only be used by the OEM or CSP. The customers cannot use their PKID. So remember, that has to be done in advance. But customers would only use that 4K hardware hash on there. A quick way of doing it, as it's got a barcode, it can be scanned. So if there is, a large deployment going on there, you can just go around with a scanner and collect all that data very easily. Alternatively, CSP partner can request Lenovo, us to provide the PKIDs for a set batch of serial numbers of the products. And then there's the part number for that and the list price of $11 per device. So what is the role of Lenovo in this? Because it's very important, as I touched on at the beginning. We provide the value-added service to register Lenovo ThinkSmart devices for Autopilot on the customer's behalf at the factory. After Lenovo registration, the customer devices are visible in the customer's Intune portal and the registration is complete. What we do not provide Microsoft Intune or Azure Active Directory or Entra support as part of this registration service. As I mentioned, this is very important. When we register the device, it sends only the device's identity and the customer's Azure tenant ID to Microsoft via our API connector. This is secure and was developed between Lenovo and Microsoft. We do not gain access to the end customer's tenant information, therefore we cannot make any game changes within. We have a non-delegated registration access, therefore we have no access to the customer's Azure account information. These are just IDs to allow that connection in the cloud to begin the Autopilot registration. Unique Intune customer information is stored in Lenovo's secure sales handling systems. Again, this is very common used for laptop and desktop deployment on there, so it's a streamlined process. This information is stored because it can be used for future device orders where Autopilot registration has taken place. So there's no reason to go through all the previous steps. It will be stored securely and then makes any subsequent orders very quick and seamless. And then we never connect to a customer device or network to complete this Autopilot registration. It's just registration at the start of the process. So the audit options we've got here. At the top, the O&M partner, which is the Lenovo. We've got the channel partner, in the case of the CSP partner, and then we've got the customer itself. So the options can be a top seller. So it's hardware that is stocked by a channel partner or ourselves in our warehouses, and this is available for quick shipment. CTO, so that's a configure to order. That's a custom model created for a customer, devices that are manufactured on order. Or the install base, that's previously purchased Lenovo devices already at a customer premises in production in the meeting rooms. CTO, just a quick note on that, that's used for custom images, specific BIOS settings, asset tags, drop in the box, etc., etc. So that's one of our custom services that we offer for a small charge there. So that then orders will come from either channel partners, end customers, or channel partners or end customers. We can take them from anywhere, of course. And what we offer, so that's the AUTOPILOT registration, again, using the PKID or serial number, and that's the part number for that. The end customer, AUTOPILOT registration for CTO or BOM inclusion, devices will be registered at the time of manufacturer. Part number for that, $8 list price per device. And then for channel partner or end customer, it's as for top sellers there. For CSPs, they will use the PKID report. That allows the CSP partners the ability to do the AUTOPILOT registration on behalf of the customer. And there's a specific part number for that and the list price of $11. And then the customer itself, they, as I mentioned, will use the 4K hardware hash, and that can be done as a service report. Hardware hash data provided to the customer to use for self-registration of AUTOPILOT devices. That's done via SSC access, and more details on these three sections to come in subsequent slides. So the onboarding process, how does it work? Customer authorizes Lenovo as OEM partner for AUTOPILOT and the registration in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Then the customer, or for CTO or channel partner install base, provides Intune administrator email to Lenovo salesperson. The Lenovo salesperson contacts the AUTOPILOT team inside Lenovo, and they create a new account for this customer or channel partner in the Lenovo SSC. That's our service supply chain portal, as you can see here on that window there. Next, the customer or channel partner will receive an email with their login information into SSC. Then the customer or channel partner will have access to SSC to edit the tenant ID, domain, and group tag under the AUTOPILOT Zero Touch customer maintained data. So that can be tweaked afterwards once they've collated that information from the customer. And then the customer or channel partner will receive an email with confirmation once the onboarding is complete. So quite a simple process there, but of course, this is how it flows. So prerequisites, the Lenovo Microsoft authorization. So into Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and then delve down into settings. This, of course, would be done by the customer end person in the Admin Center, 365 Admin. And then they have to accept the agreement to authorize a partner to do this by ticking the two tick box there, authorizing Lenovo, and then the acknowledgement of the Microsoft customer agreement. Click accept and authorize, and that is done. Next, you need to retrieve the tenant ID and domain information. So this is when a channel partner orders a top seller Lenovo AUTOPILOT registration. We have to receive the following information: the filled-in AUTOPILOT template containing the customer name, all serial numbers of the devices that registration is required for, MTM, Lenovo device part number, which is on the box as well with all the information, proof of purchase, sales order number or distribution order number. Then we need the Azure/Entra tenant ID and domain information, and then lastly, the group tag for the devices. The group tag. Group tag is a value that is associated with devices when they're registered for AUTOPILOT. It can be used to perform dynamic group assignment for Azure in Intune, and can also be determined the AUTOPILOT profile to be assigned to the member devices. Group tags are usually optional in Windows AUTOPILOT, but for Teams Room, a group tag is mandatory and must have the prefix of MTR-, followed by a unique identifier chosen by the customer. For example, MTR Lenovo. We'll go into more detail on that shortly, but like I said, it's absolutely mandatory that the group tag is set up for MTRs. Group tag field is critical so the Pro portal can tell the difference between Teams Rooms consoles and other devices that are registered for Autopilot. The group tag field is also useful when you're using dynamic device groups in Intune. Group tags can only contain alphanumeric ANSI characters, no Unicode, and there's a 200 character limit, including special characters. But 200 characters is quite a lot. You'd imagine you won't go for a slightly shorter ID on there, but just putting that out there so it's very clear. So the Autopilot and Auto Login, this is the M365 and AAD Intune setup process. We're going to take through all the different steps involved in this process to do it. Lots of information, but again, very important. And of course, these will be contained in the slides that we will send after the webinar there, so it can be used for future reference. To begin with, it's the same graphic again. Am I registered? Got the Enter ID. Configuration profile is set up. What is the end customer doing here? So we're talking about the endpoint management Intune setup side of this. So to begin with, auto logon. First, with any room system, create a resource account and assign an MTR Pro license to that resource account in Microsoft 365 Teams Pro Portal Exchange. Register the devices to Windows Autopilot, following the steps we just shown on the previous slides. Next, set up Windows Automatic Intune enrollment. Soon as the devices are AAD joined, they will be automatically enrolled in Intune. It's very simple. Create the dynamic group for MTRs, as I just said, mandatory, very important to do in Intune. Any newly deployed devices that are automatically included in the group allows Autopilot rules to be applied to MTRs only, because Autopilot rules will differ considerably between a laptop and a room system MTR. Deploy the Teams Rooms app update tool. So in app version 4.19 or later, because we're now on version 5, of course, support for Autopilot and Auto Login. So the first step in the process is to automatically update the MTR using the Teams provisioning tool to the latest version. Now we create an Autopilot enrollment status page and status profile page. This allows you to configure custom options to show what is displayed on the front of room display during the deployment process. So it's just kind of like a peace of mind. It will say I'm so far through the deployment and steps. So if somebody that isn't aware that's going on and walks past a meeting room and wonders what's on there, it will have some clear messaging to indicate that. Step 7, create the Autopilot profile. Of course, essential as part of this process. And to select Autopilot self-deploying mode, the only mode that is supported by MTRs, because we're making this a zero-touch self-deploying process. Then 8, create and assign a local administrator password solution, or LAPS for short, and that's a policy. This is to automatically set Windows local administrator passwords. And then step 9, auto login for Teams Rooms in the Pro Management Portal. That is linking the resource accounts to the specific Autopilot device. And then the deployment begins. But you see here, this is a one-time process. So once that's been done, any subsequent deployments are very quick. Resource account, registration, auto login, deploy. So it gets even quicker on any subsequent deployments that happen afterwards. So to begin, the Windows Automatic Intune enrollment. So of course, open Intune, and then you would go across to devices, and then scrolling down, you click enrollment, and then you have the automatic enrollment page. That will then open up. Now, you have the option to select some, all, or none in the MDM user scope. Some we recommend for the specifying MTR groups. Makes it a lot easier when it's set to some. Then below, you would then proceed to the next. Obviously, we've got different settings on here. These will always vary depending on how the customer uses and manages their Intune, but this is our best practices that we've done for demonstration purposes. Create the dynamic group for MTRs, as I said, very important. It's very simple. Go down to groups, all groups, create a new group, and then give it a group name. Of MTR device would be logical, and then the membership type is a dynamic group type. And then next you want to add a dynamic query. So the dynamic query is a string shown in this blue box here, and then on the next page you would add that in the dynamic query rule science syntax box here. So that opens up. You simply paste in that query after pressing the edit button there. Now we want to deploy the Teams Rooms app update tool, and this ensures, of course, that the device is on the latest version of the Teams Rooms app. As I mentioned, it's got to be on 4.19 or higher. So if you create this app, and then that can be deployed via Intune to that, and then we'll obviously automatically update the device. So download the package from this link here, and then into Intune, you go to App, Windows Apps, Add, and then add the Windows app Win32, and then select downloaded to the MTR update tool. So just a few steps there, very simple to do. There's the package title, and as so, and click OK. Now deploying the app update tool, we'd skip into the add app. You've got the information, MTRP provisioning tool, the publisher, which is a mandatory field, would be Microsoft, of course. Click next. We've got the operating system architecture. You can select both 32-bit, 64-bit, and then drop down operating system architecture, 2 selected, and then the minimum operating system is Windows 10, but of course it's going to be going to a Windows 11 device. You can, for rules formatting, you can manually configure detection rules, setting that like so, and then the rule type will be MSI, and then MSI product version check set to no. Now we can see on the bottom here, we have the MTR device, the filter mode is none, and the filters in there. But obviously there's lots of different variables that can be set up by the customer as they wish. Now we're going to create the ESP page or the enrollment status page and the page profile. So this would be in devices, and then under enrollment, and then scroll down, you can see the ESP button there. Lots of different options to select, as you can see, but I'll just talk through on the right-hand side here what these options are. This screenshot is what it will look like on the front of room display when you create an ESP for the device. So show app profile and configuration, yes. Block devices, yes. Turn on login collection, yes. Lots of yeses there, rather than go through all of them. Importantly, allowing users to use device if the installation error occurs. No, we're going to keep that there. Block the device until required use of apps are installed and they're assigned to the user/device. That can be selected. And then under blocking apps, select Teams Pro provisioning tool and select only fail selected blocking apps if a technician phase to yes. So that's basically these settings that you see here. And these are what we found to be good recommended practice for AUTOPILOT auto login. Now we want to create the AUTOPILOT profile in Intune. So again, we start with devices, move down to enrollment, and then we have our deployment profiles page that will open up here. We want to create a profile, Windows PC, of course, not on HoloLens, and we're going to first name it, and then we're going to convert all targeted devices to AUTOPILOT and set that to yes in case you want to assign AUTOPILOT profiles to device groups that contain existing devices already in Intune. Next, the out-of-box experience. The deployment mode is self-deploying. This is the only supported mode, but of course this is part of a self-deploying zero-touch process, so kind of makes sense there. Now, skipped ahead one, I'll skip back. To change the device name during the AUTOPILOT, you can apply a device name template and click on yes. And now you've got examples of the variables that you can change that device name to. So you remember on previous slides, it's got to be, MTR and, prefix with stuff on it. We've just done an example here of core dash and then variables for serial number and followed by a random 5-digit number that would come on after that. Then we create the profile. We're going to add the group. This is our dynamic device group, which is the MTR devices as we've named them in this instance, but that's the dynamic group you're adding into the AUTOPILOT profile. Moving on next to the lapse policy. So local administrator password solutions, because this is a zero-touch deployment, and a local device administrator password has to be created on the device first time round. This is where we use lapse to do it. It's a feature and it manages and backs up the password of the local admin account, and there are Azure Active Directory joined. Of course, the passwords can be accessed from there by the administrator further on down the road. This is important because it provides enhanced protection against password account attacks. It meets key customer requirements when deploying MTRs on Windows. It will automatically generate a random and complex password. That's, of course, definable in the settings. We'll store them, as I mentioned, in Entra Azure Active Directory. Password can be periodically changed according to the configured policy, and of course can be retrieved by authorized users when access is required. A lapse, most importantly, reduces the risk of privilege escalation attacks that can exploit the same local administrator password on multiple devices. Come across many people that just use the same admin password on all of their own systems. So, by using lapse, they have individual passwords, therefore much more secure in that respect. But again, these are configurable options. It's entirely optional how they wish to use them. And of course, it simplifies the management of the passwords and eliminates the need for manual or scripted solutions on there. So it's all about streamlining the process. So how is it done? Enter Azure Active Directory. You go to identify devices and then all devices. And then you see the device settings open up and you've got device settings. And then you can enable Microsoft Entra Lapse solution. Once that opens up, we'll then create a new policy. And then we go down to account protection. And then we create this profile. The platform is a bit blurry to see there, but it's Windows 10 and later. And the profile is a lapse profile. Configuration options, lots available on here. That'll be on the next profile settings page. Password, age and days, admin account name set to admin to match the predefined username on the MTR. The password complexity, the password length, minimum of course is 8 characters, maximum could be 64, and then post authentication actions. So that would be, reset the password after the reset delay grace period, for example. Again, these are all configurable options tailored to the customer's requirement on there. Next, we'd move into here and we'd have the local administrator password recovery. So this is how you would retrieve the local administrator password from the Entra Admin Center. So you go into Identity, Devices, All Devices, and then you'll see Local Admin Password Recovery under here. Then you can search for a specific device or select from the pre-populated list of devices. Show Local Admin Password, and that will reveal the password on the right-hand side there. And then you can, of course, take a note of it, copy and paste it. So very simple to retrieve it by administrator in the Entra Admin Center window. To review the audit logs, of course, another way of doing it, you can go into Identity, Devices, All Devices, and Audit Logs, and then select the activity to filter against updated device local admin passwords or recover them there. So very simple to find those passwords as and when you might need them. So auto login, last part of the process on here. What do we do in the Teams Pro Management Portal for auto login? So first and foremost, log into MTRP, go to planning, and then accept the license terms for Windows Autopilot devices. Next, we'll move across. Go back. Next, we move across into plan management and then autopilot devices. You can see devices already pre-populated in here and visible. Important to note that populating resource accounts and autopilot devices in the management portal may take up to a few hours. So sync and refresh is your friend if you're waiting around, but don't expect some newly registered devices to appear like in a few seconds or so. It's going to be an amount of time, but it's always good to kind of do it, leave a few hours and then come back. When the device does appear in here after pinging the refresh button many times, you will see it, you can click on it. And now next, it will ask you to assign a resource account to that device. So very simply, you would click on that account, and then you would have the account name and, of course, the account email address. This is the list of resource accounts that have been obviously pre-made in the Microsoft 365 portal. You've got some configuration options, of course, on the passwords, automatically generate, use existing or manual setting. So if you have set up a lapse policy, you can use the existing password for that. Or automatically generate, you would set it to automatically generate. Next, how to test autopilot on MTRs. So this would be what the customer would doing, that third branch of the graphic we were showing on the slide previous. There we go. The customer itself using their 4K hardware hash ID and would go into the testing phase. So to begin with, we need to run a bit of PowerShell on the device because we need to extract that 4K hardware hash ID from the device. So very simply, log into the administrator account on the device, run PowerShell as admin, and then copy the text below into the console and hit enter, and then Y to run that. It will create a folder named HWID, hardware ID, and that's created in the root of the C drive. 4K hardware hash ID of the device will be creating that folder. Sorry, I was kind of repeating myself there. And you can see the output file is actually a CSV file like so. This is a screenshot of the PowerShell commands that have been run here. So as I mentioned, it's all just spitting out that data there. We'll select that. It's a simple process, doesn't take very long to do. What does the output look like? So open it in Notepad. There's a device. It's in C /HWID folder. But one important, or two important things, it doesn't add the group tag and it doesn't add the MTR-Lenovo part. So you need to manually edit this hardware ID file very simply by adding comma space group tag on the top line, and then group tag at the bottom would be comma space MTR Lenovo on the end of the last row as shown there. Now, to test it, we will go back into Intune and then devices, enrollment, and then Windows Autopilot devices. We'll click on the device we want to test, and now we can add I want to add the Autopilot device into there. Of course, this is our output file that we've taken from the device, and we would upload that file like so, and then the device will appear in Windows Autopilot devices because it's using that 4K hardware hash ID. That is a unique identifier for that MTR you want to test with. So only a couple of steps to do there, but this is a bit more of a manual process. But again, it's a testing process for the customer that wants to probably just, straighten out some things in their deployment and stuff like that. Networking, an important topic whenever deploying devices, and particularly if this is a global rollout that's being used for Autopilot, it's important the network is set up properly at these locations where devices are going to be deployed using the zero-touch method. So pre-requirements for networking, it depends on various internet-based services, as you can expect, and access to these services must be provided for Autopilot to function properly. Basic requirements are name resolution for DNS names and allow access to all hosts via port 80 and 443 and 123, and that's for UDP and network time protocols. Additional configuration might be required to grant access for these required services, and that could be for more restricted networks and stuff like that. But again, this is advice. This is the customer side of things. They're responsible for their network. We're just pointing out what these requirements are to make it as a successful deployment on there. We can see here, essential. This is the Windows Autopilot deployment services. These must have access, these three URLs. Entra and Intune must be able to communicate correctly to the internet. Windows activation services need to be enabled because it's a brand new device. Obviously, it has to do its registration to get activated. The NTP port, time.windows.com, is very necessary because, different time zones and stuff like that. And then the certificate revocation lists, or CRLs, must be accessible. A couple of optionals. Autopilot automatic device diagnostics collection is available on that. And of course, Windows Update. So, Windows Update, pretty important on these devices, but the customer might be managing their updates via device rings in Teams Pro Portal and stuff like that. But we're just pointing that out as optional. So the most common methods that we encounter in case of proxies intervening in the network access. So number one, of course, would be to configure the required URLs to bypass the proxy server. Configuration on the server itself and its access to the internet directly. Limitation, long URL list that can change periodically. So that would need maintenance if URLs are changed by Microsoft and others, or there's additional URLs that are being added in as part of the process on there. For a non-zero touch autopilot out-of-box experience, the device is powered on, you'd have to set the language, location, and keyboard. No network prompts. That's going to require actual attention. So if you left shift plus F10, the prerequisites would be USB keyboard and mouse. Of course, this is not an on-screen thing you can do. You're going to need a USB drive with a pre-configured PowerShell script to configure those proxy settings manually. Command prompt, PowerShell, set execution policy, unrestricted, run the pre-configured script. The device is then going to reboot, and then OBE or UBI after reboot will continue on without user interaction. The limitation, that is by no means a zero-touch approach. So, like with all room systems and, proxies, customer really has them in place. Yes, they can be difficult, but it's just important to point out that if the proxy is in place at the time, the autopilot deployment and stuff like that, it's probably going to need some manual intervention beforehand and hopefully not part of the process, because that would then slow down the overall deployment. And number 3, Web Proxy Auto Discovery Protocol, or WPAD, is discovered the needed proxy configuration. So that's enabled by default and is supported in Autopilot. The limitation is that WPAD can be considered as a threat by network and security teams. So some may have it on, most likely they may have it off on there. But there's a couple of notes. Make sure there's no proxy authentication, and implementing proxy settings via Intune policy is not supported yet, and it might cause some issues and unexpected behavior with privileged access deployments. So in short, if you can avoid proxy deployments, probably definitely worth a conversation if you have with a customer up front. Try and avoid any proxy setup until afterwards and get the autopilot thing done nice and easy with minimal intervention or zero intervention. So notes on this. In case the device has already completed the autopilot deployment, you will need to install a recovery image from Lenovo Recovery. So it can be found at Premier Support by entering the device's serial number, smartsupport.lenovo.com, and then download recovery media. The process will then take place again from scratch during initial deployment. So that's, if it's been done once, it's got to be re-imaged to do autopilot deployment again. Please note the ownership is also stored in the U5 variables of the device motherboard. Therefore, Premier Support will follow and guide the end customer through a deregistration procedure in case of a motherboard replacement or repair. So that's the only time that Premier Support would be involved in this process. That was if a motherboard had failed, and because of that stored variable on the motherboard, that would be unique, and a new motherboard wouldn't have that, and Premier Support will guide and advise on the steps necessary for that. Completely removing a device from your tenant requires you to delete it from Intune, Entra, and Windows Autopilot device records. You can do all of these deletions from Intune, but they've got to be done in the following order. If the devices are enrolled, delete them from all devices in Intune. Delete the devices from Autopilot and devices, Windows enrollment, and that's under the Windows Autopilot deployment program. And then lastly, delete the devices from Entra ID and devices Entra ID, Entra devices. And then troubleshooting logs and information about troubleshooting anything Autopilot related can be found on this Learn Microsoft link at the bottom below there. So, how to set up specific device configurations during the autopilot deployment. So at the moment, during the autopilot deployment process, the Windows system installs only critical Windows updates. So nevertheless, in addition to autopilot, the IT admins will soon be able to take advantage of the zero-touch updates feature, which will automatically update the Teams app and Windows operating system to the latest versions on newly provisioned devices. This will be without any additional action from the admin, and no longer will devices become outdated or unsupported due to the long lead time between manufacturing and deployment, and won't require any setup or action by the admins. But for the time being, we recommend still to use the Pro Management Portal to control the Windows update through device rings. So just to make sense of that, in time, full Windows update process will be automatic, but at the moment that still will have to be triggered by the update ring, or you can let the device, of course, update overnight when the script runs at 2:30 a.m. local time. So if you want to push files from Intune, which is quite important for MTRs, we've highlighted three very common files that you might want to send to an MTR and for that consistent experience across meeting rooms. And of course, Skype settings XML. We all know what that is. That's how you can configure specific settings on the MTR via an XML script. Also, custom backgrounds, save the painful manual task of doing them all individually. You could push out those custom background PNG files, obviously, which will relate to the settings that are in the Skype settings XML script. And then if you're using ThinkSmart Manager, you can push the ThinkSmart Manager manual claiming file, which is a JSON file, via Intune itself, and then that would automatically claim the MTR to ThinkSmart Manager via this. So it's a simple process, but will save an awful lot of time by doing all three of these on the device. So you simply upload the script into Intune, Devices, Scripts, Add, and then the assignments would be the selected group, and you would choose that MTR dynamic group that we spoke about in previous slides. Oh, sorry, I was an abrupt ending. Thought there was going to be another slide on the back of that there, so I'll just dwell on that a bit more. Another piece of value add, I guess, to the conversation with the customer. I get asked a lot, I'm sure we all do, uploading those custom backgrounds, configuring the Skype settings device, and adding to ThinkSmart Manager. So all part of the process. Lots of information I know there, but it's all contained within the slides. I hope you find this useful, because this is a game changer as far as we're concerned, and I'm sure many others are, in terms of the deployment process and using AUTOPILOT to deploy room systems. I'm looking forward to how it evolves and just becomes even more streamlined and better over the coming months as the Teams rooms gets better and better, and so does the whole kind of Microsoft world surrounding that. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment and hand over to Mauro, who's going to talk about our new ThinkPad Universal Dock. I'll just give you control, sir, and I'll be in the chat to answer any questions if they come up. Over to you, Mauro.
Thanks a lot, Sean. And yes, definitely lots of information. So let's say, definitely let me confirm that all the registered contacts for this Technology Club webinar will receive a PDF version of the slides, also a link to the recording, because we understand that this set of information has to be digested somehow, and the best way is, of course, to test, because as Sean explained very well, there is an easy method to test if you have access to the Microsoft 365 admin centers, Intune, Entra, and so on, to test easily the full behavior of AUTOPILOT with an MTR. But now let's change topic, because at Enterprise Connect, Lenovo announced a solution for bring your own device rooms. So it's a ThinkSmart edition of an existing product, that is the ThinkPad, the Universal USB-C Smart Dock. I'm trying, I'm trying to get control. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so let me step back a little bit, because we should consider what types of rooms we could have in the customer deployments. So there is the bring your own device room, where, of course, the user has to bring a laptop, because in the room there are only displays and audio and video peripherals. On the right, we have a fully featured Microsoft Teams room, for example, based on our ThinkSmart Core, with all the functionality, especially if the license is a Microsoft Teams Room Pro license. And Microsoft has introduced a sort of something in the middle, It's called an entry-level Microsoft Teams room. So the idea is that for customers coming from a bring your own device experience, especially when they are extensively utilizing the room, users are likely to request an enhancement in the experience. So basically what they need is the click to join behavior of the Microsoft Teams room. But because of budget constraints, they cannot be yet ready to have a fully featured Microsoft Teams room. And so that's the reason why we have these cheap entry-level MTR. And what Lenovo announced at Enterprise Connect is basically a couple of solutions to address the first two types of those meeting rooms. So something for the bring your own device room and an entry-level MTR solution. Only MTR, so there will be no Zoom room for this specific solution that we call the Tiny Kit. So let's now focus on the solution for bring your own device. So there is no strict need for a docking station in a bring your own device room, but definitely a docking station would enhance the user experience because you have a single USB-C cable to the user laptop, and the docking station is connected then to the display and to the audio-video peripherals. Nevertheless, what is the problem from an IT management perspective regarding bring your own device rooms? First of all, there is no inventory. So really, the IT administrators have no idea of how many bring your own device rooms are there and where they are. What is the status of those meeting rooms, how they are utilized, and also talking about the usage of docking station. The problem is that a docking station has been designed for the use for a different use case. So when there is a user and the docking station is used on the user desk. Here we are talking about a shared setup. And so we need some form of cable retention and also some form of mounting kits to position properly the docking station exactly in the same way as we position, for example, a ThinkSmart Core. On top of that, if you have docking stations, the problem is that you need to maintain a docking station. For example, updating the firmware. A docking station, especially if it is connected to the network, like in this case, however, is subject to security threats, may be affected by security vulnerability. And so you need a mechanism to update the firmware of the docking station at a large scale. So what is the solution addressing all those pain points? Is the solution that we just announced, the ThinkPad Smart Dock, USB-C Smart Dock. In our portfolio, we have two smart docks. So smart means that they are connected to the network and they can be monitored and managed remotely. One is the USB-C, that is what we are talking about. The other is the Thunderbolt 4 smart dock. Here, specifically, the solution is based on the cheaper, that is the USB-C one. And as you can see in the picture, basically, we have added a frame for cable retention and the mounting under the table or on the wall. So we are planning to start the distribution of this solution around August. The MSRP will be $349 US, but please be aware that this solution is to address specifically customers that are not ready yet for a full MTR solution. so for a full room kit. There are some benefits, but in general, the idea is to help the customer through the bring your own device phase, working to get ready for a further enhancement and offer a proper MTR solution at a later stage. In practical terms, the ThinkSmart Edition is the existing product with 2 longer cables compared to the standard product, so a 2-meter USB-C cable and a 5-meter HDMI cable. And on top of that, as I said, the mount bracket and the cable retention solution. So you can see it's something that is to secure the connection and the docking station properly so that it can be mounted, for example, on the wall without any risk of accidental removal of the cables. So talking about the standard product, because most of the characteristics of the features are of the standard USB-C smart dock. So it's a smart dock that can connect up to 3 4K displays. But in practical terms, we are not recommending to use more than one display, simply because of compatibility. We are going to spend a few words on compatibility, but definitely compatibility is a key requirement of all the customers. It's impossible that we have a customer that is only using Lenovo ThinkPad laptops. And so we need to guarantee that everything is working. There are some, for example, old MacBook versions that are not supporting more than one display. So to be on the safe side in terms of compatibility, we need to guarantee that there is actually only one. In fact, you have 3 ports in terms of connection to the display, and so 2 display port and 1 HDMI. You can easily use just the HDMI and that's it. Then, of course, it's a docking station, so you have 6 USB ports. The connection on the USB-C cable between the dock and the laptop is using the standard DisplayPort Alt mode. That is a standard protocol recognized by all the manufacturers as a standard, and so it's the mechanism to provide universal compatibility. In fact, the name is ThinkPad Universal USB-C Smart Dock. Universal is referring to the use of the display port Alt mode on the USB-C cable. Then, in terms of management, the keyword is Microsoft Azure Sphere, and we will spend a few words on that as well. Just for your reference, we are talking about 60 watt to power the connected laptop, and the full docking station is powered by 135 watt power adapter. So the idea here is that an IT administrator can manage the fleet of bring your own device rooms because the smart docks are connected to the network. They can be connected with either wired connection, so Ethernet, RJ45, or Wi-Fi, because the chipset are supporting both options. You need to provide access to specific destination that we are going to see to reach basically the Microsoft Azure infrastructure, because on that infrastructure, Lenovo has built a management console that we call the Smart Dock console. It's a web-based platform that allows the administrator to monitor, to update firmwares, and do lots of things. First of all, there is the inventory. As I said, you see the status, the full list of your bring your own device rooms, and the list of so where they are located and the status. You have a live status and utilization information globally, or maybe just for specific locations or a specific device. Let me clarify here. You know that Microsoft is working on a bring your own device solution as well, and not necessarily based on a docking station. So the idea in the Microsoft strategy is that if Microsoft is recognizing that there are at least 5 different users using the Teams desktop client connected to the same set of hardware, we mean display, audio and video, then audio, video and display are considered as a shared space. And so in the Pro Management portal, then the IT administrator can have the inventory, because it can have a list of all the shared spaces. However, Microsoft is saying you can have also status and utilization information and statistics if you assign to that shared space a license. That is actually the Teams shared displays, Teams shared device license, the old common area phone license. Let me clarify, however, that in that case, you can get from Microsoft very detailed utilization information and also statistics in terms of quality, but only related to the usage of a Teams client. So since we are talking about bring your own device rooms, when the client running on the laptop is Google Meet or Zoom Room, Microsoft will not provide any information, not because technically it's not possible, but because, let's say, they can't for several reasons. In our case, the utilization is 0 if there is no PC connected, and 100% if there is a PC connected. So we are UC platform agnostic. We can really provide utilization information based on the actual utilization, regardless of whether the customer is using Google Meet, Zoom, and so on. So that is an important difference. And by the way, we are not asking any license to be paid to retrieve that information. The Smart Dock is free of charge and will remain free of charge. Another possibility that you can get in the Smart Dock dashboard is to retrieve the list of connected peripherals. Let's say probably it's not the most user-friendly feature. It's on demand, so it should be the IT administrator to query the specific device dock to retrieve the hardware identifier of the thing, Smart Bar 180 or the display or whatever is connected to the docking station. In that case, there may be some little disconnection on the USB-C port to the laptop, and so our strong recommendation is, of course, to run these kind of queries out of business hours if you want to know also further details about the room setup. Of course, apart from this functionality regarding the query on the connected peripherals, all the other functionalities are available even if there is no laptop connected to the Smart Dock. The only requirement, as it is described here, is that the docking station must be connected to the internet. There are, There are other functionality in the Smart Dock, mainly the possibility to control and manage the firmware updates. So if you have 300 docking station or smart docks for 300 bring your own device rooms, of course you need an easy way to push a firmware update, and you can monitor the status. You can make it automatic, manual. You can define a subset of devices to test a new firmware before extending the firmware to the rest of the fleet, and so on. And monitoring also the utilization, you can also rescue devices in a meeting room that is not used. So if you recognize that a meeting room is underutilized, you can decide to rearrange the deployment. There is also the possibility to have multiple users, so multiple administrators, and you can assign a different set of devices to different administrators. So you have also this level of delegation. But of course, the key element regarding this mechanism is related to security. But before talking about security, let me explain that the Smart Dock console will not be at this stage integrated in Lenovo ThinkSware Manager. So if you have a combination of MTRs and BYOD rooms, you will not be able at this stage to monitor and control everything inside the ThinkSware Manager. What the ThinkSware Manager in the initial implementation will offer is simply a link to reach easily, let's say, the Smart Dock, but there is no need to pass through ThinkSware Manager to reach the Smart Dock console. So security. Security is essential for this kind, because of course you want the dock to be connected to the network because you want to monitor and manage, but if it is connected to the network, then it could become vulnerable. So the solution here is based on hardware and software provided under strict specification by Microsoft. So the hardware has to be specific for Azure Sphere. Actually, we are talking about an MCU, it's called a microcontroller unit, that is running a Linux kernel with an operating system, an application layer that is defined for IoT devices by Microsoft for a fully secure connection to the cloud Azure services. So there are plenty of details about the structure of the Azure Sphere operating system and the underlying software, but you can think that this platform has been designed from scratch with security in mind, because it's essential that there is high level of security in terms of, for example, of root of trust that is hardware based, not software based. So it means that basically the hardware and the software can be uniquely identified by Microsoft as trusted. And there are many other mechanisms to make the connection of the Smart Dock to the Azure infrastructure fully secure. If your customer is interested in investigating further the security aspects behind the Smart Docks, of course we are here to help and have a deep dive solution session for that. Of course, we are talking about the ThinkPad dock or ThinkPad docking station, and so that well-established portfolio of solution is sustainable, assured in terms of quality, and compatible. So in terms of sustainability, for example, we have a minimum target of having at least 25% of PCC plastic, so recycled plastic. We are using renewable energy in factory for production. We measure the carbon footprint of the docking solution and so on. In terms of quality assurance, not cable bending, hot plug and unplug of the cables, temperature test, and many things. So the ThinkPad docking stations are well recognized in the market as high quality and high reliability. And of course, we are proud about that. And as I said, in terms of compatibility, the solutions are not designed just for Lenovo PC. The purpose, the intention is to allow the maximum compatibility with non-Lenovo Windows PC, but also Apple, Chromebooks, and so on. Specifically, what we are doing at the moment is to test specifically with a subset of MacBook and other Windows PC, the combination of the ThinkSmart Edition Smart Dock with, for example, the ThinkSmart Bar 180 or the ThinkSmart Bar and ThinkSmart Cam. So we want to guarantee, I wouldn't say guarantee, but definitely reduce any risk of incompatibility when this smart dock is going to be launched in the market. Which types of rooms are we targeting with these? Huddle, small, and maybe some of the medium, because in general, you should consider what are the cable lengths. So, for example, here in this picture, we have the smart dock used with the ThinkSmart Bar 180. In the ThinkSmart Bar 180, you can have as an option, as an accessory, a 5 meter, because in the box you have a 2 meter USB-C cable. You can reach a 5 meter with that cable, and inside the ThinkPad, the ThinkSmart Edition Smart Dock, you have a 5 meter HDMI and 2 meter for the laptop. So, being that the length of the cables, you cannot cover large rooms, definitely. And also, in my opinion, it would make no sense to have a bring your own device room in a large setup, but we can debate about that. In terms of configuration, 2 minutes, and I'm going to hand over back to Sean. So, as I said, both Wi-Fi and Ethernet connectivity, but please be aware that if the customer has some port authentication requirements, so 802.1x, it's not supported on Ethernet, it's supported on Wi-Fi, at least in the current software version that we have in the smart docks. If there are, again, strict closed network and you need to open specific destination, definitely you need to open all the destinations to reach the Microsoft Azure infrastructure that Microsoft is documented. But then you have also 4 specific URLs that are specific to the smart dock service that is running on top of the Microsoft Azure infrastructure. In terms of deployment, what will happen? There is a documentation on Lenovo support with all the details, but from a very high level point of view, the idea is that an IT administrator creates an organization, so a tenant, an account in the smart dock console, and then download 2 files. One is for the administrator itself, and it's used to generate a configuration file for a specific dock. Then the other file, together with the configuration file, will be given to a technician. The technician will install those two files on his or her laptop and will configure locally, so connected to the actual smart dock, all the details, mainly details about the network connectivity. So if access to the Wi-Fi is protected by password or other things, basically in this setup, the administrator will be able to define all the details. And that's it about the smart dock. Now, let me move the control back to Sean, because we have the last topic that is you got the
I've got
control.
it. Yeah, I took it back.
Okay.
And so I always forget every time I give you remote control and I'll start trying to answer a question and forget you're controlling the screen. So sorry about that. Just while I talk, I saw a question in the chat, an anonymous attendee, but asking would advise installing ThinkSmart in a large auditorium in terms of cabling control. If you're referring to the dock, and whilst that question came in, there's no reason why not. Obviously, the cabling side of things, you'd have the dock. If it's a large auditorium, it would be on the podium, lectern type place, and you would need to extend HDMI signals over extenders. Or if it is, you think about a room system, then absolutely, ThinkSmart Core is the room system that is totally flexible and scalable to any size of space. So I know of many customers that are using ThinkSmart Core in auditoriums, town hall spaces, lecture theatres, whatever, that'll be going in there. So the answer is yes, but obviously cabling and any large space would need to use third-party extenders to extend video signals and audio signals, USB signals, stuff like that accordingly. Anyway, without further ado, the ThinkSmart Tiny Kit. So yeah, it was not one, but two product announcements last month now. I'm going to take you through this and the last 10 minutes or so we have today. So for all of you still with us, thank you very much. It's been very heavy on technical content today, particularly with AUTOPILOT. But as mentioned, these slides will be available for everyone on there. So please do use them as a reference and then reach out to the three of us if you have any questions. ThinkSmart Tiny, entry-level MTR. You know, Microsoft decided you can have an entry-level Microsoft Teams rooms. This is positioning wise, I think you're looking at, you know, when using bring your own device, users often find themselves, they want a better meeting room experience. But of course, with bring your own device, it's reliant on the user to run the meeting via their laptop and stuff like that. Also, sometimes for meeting spaces, limited budgets could be blocking the new investments into a fully fledged MTR, like a ThinkSmart Core, ThinkSmart One or Hub or something like that. So with the recent announcement of the new low-cost MTR, this allows, you know, certainly customers that might want to be testing the water for a room system and just want to, okay, let's take a couple of samples, small meeting spaces, chuck in one of our sub $1,000 room kits in there and just, you know, kind of embark on their journey into Teams rooms and stuff like that and understand how it goes together, in particular with deployment and stuff. Key things about these, they are based on Intel Core i3 processors and they're priced under $1,000. You know, other manufacturers have got some on the market, and then this is ours. The functionality is going to be limited though to basic. So what we're talking here, key things to point out to in conversations with anyone looking to have them, it's going to be a single front of room display only. So no dual display setup. Only single camera support, which is fine for most small meeting rooms. But if you are in a complex meeting space and that, this might fall short in some areas unless you've got a really high power PTZ camera running with it. It's not going to support intelligent cameras, and there's no support on content cameras as well, because that's, you know, essentially like a second camera on there. So these limitations are very important to keep in mind if positioning one of these devices. Certainly, it's aimed at, you know, customers refreshing huddled small spaces or existing bring your own device rooms. They might not have anything in the meeting room. It could just be a display and an HDMI cable in there. So they need a bit more power in there and a more flexibility and consistent experience for users in that meeting room. This device is based on the M70Q, so that's the ThinkCentre M70Q. That's the Gen 4 Tiny. It will come with our USB controller, and eventually with an HDMI ingest dongle. Plan at the moment is ship support for July, August, so in the summer this year, and the MSRP is going to be under $1,000. As I mentioned, the version with the HDMI ingest dongle will be available later this year. So the initial versions will not have an HDMI ingest dongle. They will come later on. Now, I won't go into all the reasons about this, but for those thinking that you can just get any USB HDMI ingest dongle from Amazon or somewhere like that to work on there, they will not work. HDMI ingest dongles need to be certified by Microsoft, so you can't just grab a €10 one or €20 one from Amazon, plug it in. It's not going to be recognized. It's not going to work. So we will have the dongle coming out later on in the year after initial launch of the device in summer. But to begin with, it won't have one. But rest assured, that doesn't matter because you can do Teams casting, you can join the call from in your meeting room, and you can share from your laptop to get content into the call, like many people are doing at the moment. So it seems to be trending quite well. Spec-wise, 60 gig memory, like all the other devices. There's still a bunch of ports on there, but again, the limitations on cameras, stuff like that. USB-C port at the front is for the core controller, and then a single HDMI 2.1 output for connecting the display, and then wired Ethernet. So also the key differences between the Tiny and a regular ThinkSmart Core. The warranty is different. Of course, it can be upgraded, but with all of our room systems, excluding the Tiny, they come with 3 years of standard Premier support. The Tiny will only come with a 1-year warranty and 1-year Premier support, but of course that can be upgraded via different part number SKUs that can be available on order or later on down the line. The ThinkSmart Start promotion we have with our regular room systems is not included on the Tiny, so there's no first-year maintenance, professional services. ThinkSmart Manager Premium is not included, and there is not a mounting kit included. Sorry, all this stuff isn't on there, but to build a low-cost sub-$1,000 MTR, there has to be some reductions in certain areas to make this come in at the right price. But I draw your attention to the stats at the bottom here. These are some of the key differences, right, between ThinkSmart Core, which is a purpose-built room system compute for ThinkSmart, and then ThinkSmart Tiny, which is a desktop small form factor compute. Now, there's differences between the two. vPro is a key one. For the users of ThinkSmart Manager out there, the leverage the power of vPro, that's not going to be available on ThinkSmart Tiny. Sure, you'll be able to enroll the ThinkSmart Tiny and ThinkSmart Manager, but you won't have that vPro remote control because the chipset on there does not have a vPro chip to enable it. The TDP, it's far less on the core because, again, that is built for room systems. So, it's more than double on the Tiny. But again, this is not going to impact the overall functionality of it. It's just to draw the differences between a dedicated room system and a desktop room system. Doesn't have the ultra low noise certs like the Core does, nor does it have the integrated HDMI input port. And I've just talked about the dongle, I know, a second ago. And of course, the GPU, there's differences in terms of execution units between the Intel Iris Xe on board the Core and then the Intel UHD graphics there. So the execution units you can see are 80 and 24 respectively. So key differences between the device. But again, this is an entry-level MTR. For customers, might be a budget constraints, they might be just new to MTR, or they want to get rid of their bring your own device solutions. Hopefully not the ThinkSmart Dock, happy want people to use that, but they might just be in need of a room system and just to gain a bit more manageability and kind of consistent user experience across their meeting spaces there. So like I said, available in the summer, expecting late July, August sort of time. There'll be more information when it's hitting distribution and going to ship support, as we call it at Lenovo, very soon in the coming weeks and months leading up to that. But again, an important product to have into our portfolio because we want to give customers wide range of choice of solutions. Everything from docks to Teams displays, now budget MTRs, different form factor MTRs. And above and beyond. So, please consider that in any conversations and thoughts that might come up for solutions such as this. And just lastly, clarify about the HDMI ingest dongle. I know I touched on this here, but just to be a bit clear about that, because there's typically where something I'm going to get asked questions about. The TinyKit version will be, the ingest dongle will be available later in the year. So that's after the summer. There will be a fully certified dongle available for the Tiny. By that time, it'll be available as a standalone accessory for customers that have purchased the device, the Tiny, on its own when it's first released. As I mentioned, any USB-C to HDMI dongle on the market will not work with the kit. You'll get a message on the controller saying this device is not certified, or please plug in a certified HDMI ingest device on it. I've tried it on my Tiny that I've got sat next to me with a cheap HDMI dongle on there. It won't work, trust me. So at the moment, as mentioned, content sharing can be done via casting from PCs or smartphones, or by joining the meeting on your laptop in the same room there. And that's a very popular method of doing so. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Very technical heavy technology club, but that's what we're here and that's what it's all about. Of course, please, do reach out with any questions moving forward. Seen plenty of questions in the chat there. Was there any in particular, Mauro, that you would like to just talk about in the last minute or so that we've got?
Yeah, definitely. I see some concern about the number of Microsoft platforms that are used to manage a Microsoft Teams room, because we know there is a Teams Admin Center, there is a Pro Management Portal. If you want to use AUTOPILOT, you need also Azure AD, Entra AD, or whatever, and Intune. So I understand that it's quite complex. I don't know the details of the Microsoft strategy in terms of integrating or merging these kind of platforms, if any. In general, the idea is that Intune and Azure AD are used for the initial setup. Then the Pro Management Portal, much more than the Teams Admin Center, would be used for daily management, for example, to control with the device rings the Windows updates, all the updates to be rolled out in your fleet. So I understand that it's not an easy answer, also because I would suggest to add to that picture also the Lenovo ThinkSphere Manager, because of the functionality that provides not only to configure our peripherals remotely, but also some deep remote management and remote access capabilities deeper than what Microsoft has just launched. Just to give you an example, with Microsoft, for security reasons, they have decided not to allow remote access during a meeting. So if there is a meeting in progress, no way to access the MTR on Windows. In our system, we can do that. And of course, that would allow a better support or a deeper level of troubleshooting in case of issues, just to give you an idea. Other questions? I'm looking at the list. There is a question about the manual claiming JSON file for the ThinkSphere Manager, because at the moment when you create that JSON file, you can set up to 90 days of expiration, let's say. There is a plan to increase it. Actually, I've heard to increase up to 999 days. That should be enough. But we don't know yet the details by when that change will be introduced, but definitely it's in the development pipeline. And I think that's it. We reached the hour. So back to you, Sean, for the final
Excellent.
Greetings.
Well, thank you very much for everyone sticking with us and going through that. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, dear colleagues, I managed to get through it without mixing up Autopilot and Copilot. I may have done, but if I did, we're only talking Autopilot because I do it all so often. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day. Links to the slides and recordings will follow. And of course, reach out to us for any questions and stuff moving forward. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Technology Club later on in the year. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Goodbye.
we switch to
Yeah. Just try to stop
Teams.
the recording.